So I've just written a note around, well, I've written a few things as you've been talking about highly suggestible
Mm,
and not being able to make someone do something they don't want to, but also I want to believe. That's almost like, do
mm.
you remember the X-Files and the poster?
Yeah, I want to believe. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I totally relate to that. That is totally me. So this is called the Cynic's Guide, and it's there because I describe myself as someone who really wants a wow moment. I really want to
Mm,
believe. I really want to kind of try something and go, oh, yeah. And
mm,
yet there's something that holds me back.
mhm,
And I describe it as my inner cynic, but it stops me from being wholehearted. It stops me from experiencing any of the things that I'm finding out about in the
mhm,
way that I think would benefit me. So
mm.
I wonder whether you've got any thoughts on cynicism in general
Mhm.
and how you might approach a cynic.
Yeah. So cynicism in general, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I'm quite cynical at times, and I'm cynical um, about the hypnotherapy industry, to be honest. I'm cynical about that. I think that people should be, because that's a sweeping statement. A lot of hypnotherapists aren't regulated. Um, you could do a 1 day online course and call yourself a hypnotherapist and charge £200 an hour,
Oh,
and then start delving into people's past and digging up trauma and all that kind of stuff. And that's not a good thing. I think people should do their research and um, you know, properly think things through when they're entering into these kind of um, engagements with people. So cynicism's not a bad thing, but generally speaking, cynicism, we can think of, well, what's the purpose of cynicism? Well, the purpose of cynicism is to protect us from things going wrong, us being tricked or being put in some form of danger. And where does that come from? Well, that comes from the primitive part of our mind. So if we think about our mind very simple in a simplified manner, so we split the mind into the intellectual mind, which is contains the prefrontal cortex, which is what you and I are using now. It's the part that we use when we communicate, when we talk. It's the rational, positive, solution-focused part of our minds, and that's attached to the cerebral cortex, which is the subconscious part of our intellectual mind. And those two parts of our brain, they are rational. They always come up with answers and solutions based upon a rational assessment of the situation, and they're generally positive. Excuse me. The other part of our brain is the primitive part of the brain, and people describe it in all different kinds of ways as the what's the guy, the chimp mind, chimp paradox? Is it the chimp brain? I think he calls it.
yeah.
Um, so the primitive mind is part of our limbic system, which runs all of our autonomic processes. So, generally speaking, we don't think about breathing unless we consciously take the time to do so. We don't think about our heartbeat. We don't regulate that consciously. We don't think about cell division, blood pressure, body temperature, a million and one different things that our autonomic system's running that. But the primitive mind, the central and most influential part of the primitive brain in how I talk to clients is the amygdala, which is responsible for the fight, flight, freeze. So when we feel under a lot of pressure, either suddenly or it's been building up over time, we'll go into that either fight, run away, or freeze up mode, really or metaphorically. And that's because, we were designed to live in times where we had to fight for our lives or run away for things, but we still react in that way. And then there's the hippocampus, which stores all of our primitive learned habits and behaviors, often inappropriate. So cynicism would be in the hippocampus.
Okay.
So when we feel stressed or very busy or in some kind of threat, what will happen is the amygdala will kick in. They'll be like, right, what's going on here? We're under some kind of threat. We need to go into that unconscious survival mode. So we're not going to think rationally. We just need to think, what do we do to get ourselves out of this situation? So I'll ask the hippocampus, okay, hippocampus, this doesn't happen really like this, but I'm just for my story, it's they speak to each other. with a mild northeastern accent. And it says, okay, hippocampus, what will you do in this situation? The hippocampus will say, well, in the past, I've always been cynical, and that's always worked because you're still alive. So there you go. It might not be helpful for you, but it's what you've done in the past, and you've survived, so you'll do it again. Primitive mind's not intellectual; it just keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again. So yeah, so how I would work with clients is that I would, first of all, I'd make sure that you do want to get rid of this cynicism. It's not just a natural, healthy thing that you have, um, like a lot of people have, hey, that you genuinely want to work with and you have that intention to do so. And then you might think about, um, what would your preferred future be like? What would it be like if you weren't cynical? And what is the opposite of being cynical? So start thinking about how you can frame that. So the opposite of cynical, well, we don't want to be naive, obviously, but
Mm.
maybe we want to be more open-minded. And how would that look to you?
I think it's wholehearted to me.
Wholehearted, and that's great that that's the words that you're using because they are words that resonate with you. So that's super important. So if we were to think about, imagine that, so we're talking about cynicism, and I'm asking you to imagine that I have a magic wand. So I wave a magic wand, and there you go. That's something to say to a cynic. I wave a magic wand. Go with me. And tomorrow morning you wake up and you're feeling, so what was the word? Wholehearted. You wake up in the morning, you're feeling wholehearted. Just slightly more wholehearted. It's not massively, there's not huge change, but something really, really clear, and you're feeling definitely different, slightly more wholehearted. What might be the first thing that you notice yourself doing on a morning, feeling slightly more wholehearted? You don't have to answer, but you can if you want, if something comes up.
I think it would be how I respond to others.
Mm,
I think I would um respond to others without kind of that little voice that's kind of rubbishing
mhm,
or judging. I think there's something, I think I'd let go of some judgment as well, and I'd kind of,
mhm,
yeah, connect with others in a bit more of a wholehearted way. So maybe it's if someone's sent me a message or if I see something on Facebook that
mhm,
I would kind of engage with it
mhm,
in a positive way.
mm. So you'd engage with someone in a positive, more wholehearted way. Sorry, I don't want to give you a full therapy session. I'm just trying to give you an example. So then
Yeah.
we'd really build that out. So we'd start talking about things like, well, how would that feel? How would you feel differently? What would you notice about yourself? Who would notice a difference in you? Because people always notice changes in you, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. Who would be the people who would notice a difference, and what would they notice differently about you? And would build that out. And then you might want to think about setting yourself an actual goal for that would be in alignment with that new version of you. So, setting yourself the goal to wake up the next morning and intentionally engage with someone in a different way. Because when we do that, it kind of builds momentum in that new direction. So we start finding ourselves doing a whole load of different things. So I do that, and then at that point, that might be a good point to go into the relaxation part of the session because we've set a clear objective through the conscious mind. So the anterior singular cortex, I think I'm right in saying, is the secretary of the mind, which does all of the work for the prefrontal cortex. So you're given that instruction for that part of your brain to go to the subconscious and say, okay, this is Rachel's intention. This is how she wants to be tomorrow morning. How can we make that work? And then I put you into a nice and relaxing trance session. And as I said, I use indirect suggestion. So it's just putting you through a nice guided trance with some vague suggestion in there that you can interpret in a way that you want. So we'll start talking about um, we'll start using some metaphors. I've got some nice metaphors about, for example, I use one quite often about I'm trying to think about one that initiates positive change. I used one about people in a village who were given a painting by a stranger that they believed to have mystical powers, and they put it on the wall, and they thought all of their good luck came from that painting. And then they let a stranger sleep over one night, and he basically stole the painting and left. And the next morning they were devastated, and they all got together, and then one of them started to paint her own picture on the wall, and she started to paint a beautiful painting of birds and flowers and trees. And then the others all joined in and started to make this elaborate, beautiful painting on the wall. And they looked out the window, and the sky was blue again, and the birds were singing again, and all was well. And that's a metaphor because it's the suggestion there that we can initiate our own change. And I'm not telling you directly to initiate your own change, but your subconscious mind is interpreting it in that way. And I'm kind of bypassing the cynical conscious mind, which is always trying to stop you from changing, because the primitive mind hates change because any form of change is a threat. So we're bypassing the primitive mind by using metaphor and indirect suggestion. And you're getting that subconscious part of the brain to start working away. And then in the coming days or weeks, or maybe even straight away, you'll start coming up with new ideas and start trying out new behaviors. And I'll work with clients over a period of time. I'm not an instant, you know, 1 hour with me and your your life will be changed forever. Hypnotherapist, you can direct suggestion works to a degree, but its effects, in my experience, wear off after a while. So I work with clients for a period of time, 5 sessions, sometimes 10 to 12. And to support that change. And yeah, that's how I'd work with them.
So I've written out a couple of things. So you said something about fear of change, and I thought, so
Mm,
one of the things that comes up for me around cynicism is like I want things to change. I want to
mm,
believe in myself and that
yeah,
I can create a podcast that people are actually going to watch and be interested in, because what's
mhm,
to watch. And so I'll do these things, and then there's a little bit of a little undermining part. I always put it's always this part of the back of my mind. Don't know where it really is. That goes, I don't know why you're bothering. You're not gonna succeed.
mhm,
And I think that's the cynic that's kind of trying to keep me safe and trying
mhm.
to keep me from not changing.
Yeah,
And it's exhausting because there's then the part of me that's driving forward and a part of me that's pulling back.
yeah,
I
yeah.
wonder what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I mean, we all have that voice, and it is from the primitive mind. I think there's a couple of different dynamics. Am I being assumptive to say that you're a northerner as well, Rachel? I
Oh
think you are.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm from
But
Liverpool.
I think that's ingrained into us, isn't it, as northerners? So more so than most people. But that voice that you describe is the primitive mind. We all have it, and it's never going to go away. It's always going to be there. But a starting point is I would say to my clients, once you understand how your brain works and you realize that that primitive mind is on your side, but it was designed for different times. It was designed for when we were, for our primitive ancestors, when we were cavemen and cave women, when we genuinely were under threat all the time from predators, from other tribes, people wanting to kill us. And we had to be thinking like that. We had to be thinking, was that rustle in the bushes? I don't know whether I'm right in saying they were around at this time, a saber-toothed tiger, or have I been watching Fred Flintstone? I don't know. But is it something trying to kill me? And do I need to be run away? Um, so we genuinely needed to think in that way, but our brain hasn't developed since those times. And our brain is trying to look out for that danger, and it also overreacts massively. So if someone cuts us up in traffic, it can be as though we've been attacked by a gorilla or something like that. I'm really kind of going off piece here with my animals. But yeah, we really can overreact because that mind's just not designed for modern times. But I think the starting point is to understand that. And some people, clients come up with their own solutions. It's not for me to tell them what to do because they come up with better solutions. An example being the wording that you used for the opposite of cynicism, that would resonate perfectly with your subconscious. But if I chose my own words, it wouldn't. So that's why clients need to come up with their own solutions. But examples that clients have used is they've named that voice. So they think about that voice as being like an ugly head on their shoulder, yapping away. And they're like, look, I've had enough of this. Off you go. You know, primitive mind, I appreciate you trying to help me out, but this is not useful and it's not correct, and push them away. Or other clients have visualized a kind of a dog chained to a gate and kind of yapping away at them when they walk past, and they're just saying thank you, but I'm on my way. So it's understanding that that voice is not, it's not speaking the truth, but it's also not your enemy. It's trying to help you. And yeah, I think that's a starting point.